WNST, Tassau for the Twin Cities. It'll be my first of several trips. I'm going to be an honorary Minnesotan by the time it's all over with in February as I go out there and freeze for 9 days. I hope the weather's a little more gentle this weekend, and the football is indoor. The Vikings, however, are torrid at this point and maybe even favored in the NFC North. This guy covers all things Vikings in the Twin Cities for the Star Tribune. You can follow his work out on Twitter at Andrew_Kramer, and that's Kramer with 2 M's, not like the 1 M of the old quarterback days. And you can also follow him at StarTribune.com. And also a contributor to Access Vikings on Twitter. Andrew making his maiden voyage here in Baltimore because, dude, let's be honest, the Vikings and the Ravens don't get together often, and when they do, it's usually very interesting, isn't it?
It is. I remember the last one out there in Baltimore. I think it would have been back in 2013 when there was like 5 touchdowns in the last minute, that snow game.
That is, by the way, everyone's favorite ever non-playoff Raven game. You know, when there was no stake, if you were at that game that day, everyone has a story to tell. I guess it's kind of like the Tuck Rule game because it was that kind of a snowstorm, and everyone would remember that because you don't get many like that in the NFL.
No, you don't. I just remember Cordero Patterson. I think that was the first time he ever played in snow, and he obviously scored one of those touchdowns in the last minute, the all-pro kick returner for the Vikings, and I think he just wanted to do a snow angel so bad in that end zone, but he just couldn't. I can't remember what it was, the team celebration rules or something. He wanted a bunch of people to be a part of it. But, yeah, I remember him talking about that after the game for sure.
Well, this will be a different one. You know, I remember the Vikings beating us. We missed a field goal up there with Hauschka many moons ago. All I remember about the Metrodome was, you know, that horn goes off, and, you know, all the horns come out on the fans. And the new stadium, new vibe, new everything. But the thing I think about with the Vikings, and I'm going to be harping on it all week, is resiliency. I mean, we're sort of wiping our eyes here a little bit about Brandon Williams and Brent Urban and Marshall Yonda. Now, I mean, we've had as many injuries as anyone. Dude, you guys are on your 3rd quarterback around there, and I would think is, you know, the beat guy on the beat there from the day Bridgewater went down to where they are right now. The competitiveness of this franchise and of Zimmer and what the team has done over the last 16 months is really kind of astonishing, really.
Yeah, you're right. And we talk about being a beat writer of this team. We kind of call it being on the knee surgery beat, whether it's Adrian Peterson, Sam Bradford, Teddy Bridgewater, Dalvin Cook. It keeps coming. All these key spots that suffer specifically ACL and knee surgeries lately. I don't know what it is about the water here or what's going on with the grass in Minnesota, but you're right. They're still 4-2. They're still tied for atop the division. And they still look like they're going to be in control of it now that they just knocked Aaron Rodgers out for the year. So this is a team that I think even if Case Keenum's starting at quarterback, the way Mike Zimmer has not only built this defense, but really instilled a kind of culture of not feeling sorry for yourself. There's no because I think a lot of teams would kind of be like kick the ground and go, oh, shucks, look at us. We're on our 3rd, 4th quarterback now and on our 2nd or 3rd running back. But this team is very much saying, no, look, we're built on the defensive side. We're built to win ugly. We are built to win on special teams. We have never been the team that's going to outscore you 40-30, and we don't need necessarily all these explosive plays to win. And they're showing that they can still generate some of these big plays. You're seeing Case Keenum put together a good game every now and then. You're seeing Jerick McKinnon run for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns yesterday. So they're still finding production, and really it does. It starts with the defense and that resiliency.
Well, we're finding out what life after Marshall Yonda looks like, and life without Brandon Williams, who's taking up double teams up on the front. We're getting the ball run on us now. The Case Keenum is a case study, right? I mean, Duke came out of a tree and kicked our ass in Houston a couple years ago. Trust me, Dean Pease, John Harbaugh, Suggs, any of the guys that were on the field that day, they're not going to forget that. And obviously, you put the tape on, he's playing well right now. I don't want to compare him to Stafford just yet, but, I mean, I've had some Detroit conversations here this week. Clearly, that NFC North thing now is wide open, and despite the many woes of the Vikings, and here comes Bridgewater back, this is going to be an interesting campaign as a beat writer, and I think the Vikings, they're going to be in it through the end here. This is an interesting season for the franchise because the defense really does lead the way, but it really means that the offense needs to at least be semi-productive and certainly can't be turning the football over, and at least for now, it's been a pretty nice formula the last couple of weeks.
It really has. It really has. And the way how this year is different is it all changed on Sunday with Aaron Rodgers' broken collarbone. Because when you went back and looked at last year, the Vikings started 5-0. They were scoring on defense. They were scoring on special teams. They looked like that group. They were playing their best football, how you envisioned them reaching their potential would be. And then when they started to fall apart, that's when the Packers ran the table, I think, and went 6-0 in the final stretch. And it just looked like, okay, now everything's restoring itself. Well, now it can't necessarily restore itself to the way fans are used to seeing because Rodgers is not there. And Brett Hundley's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. So I think you're right. It is wide open for this Vikings team now, even with the injuries that they've got going on. And a big part of it is controlling the ball on offense, not turning it over, running the ball. Their run game is really, really critical. And even without Dalvin Cook, it is still produced. They've run for 159 yards against Chicago, 112 yards against Green Bay. And a lot of what they do in the passing game is built off the play action that they install with that running game. So I think a lot of that is going to be a big factor against Baltimore, is if they can establish that run, control the ball, eat clock, and then let their defense play the way they do.
Yeah, established to run kind of scares me because I've seen what that's looked like. Jacksonville over in Wembley, and certainly, the Steelers look like they're starting to run the ball again. Not so much against us, but from the Vikings' perspective, defensively and what they're trying to do in the front seven, I think throughout, what Zimmer was trying to bring there after all the woefulness, brought in as the defensive side of the ball guy. They bring the chin straps every single week, and I'm kind of hard pressed to look through that defense and even figure out who the best player is on that defense. I mean, I'll take Rhodes for $200 in the back end, but, I wouldn't want to see Anthony Barr leaning down on me either, though.
No, or how about Harrison Smith, who I thought just had one of the best games of his life at safety back there for the Vikings. He's coming off a game in which he had 1.5 sacks, a one-handed interception, another pass deflection. I think it was on third down where he rips the ball out of Jordy Nelson's hands. I mean, this guy's a monster back there at safety. And if he can be a factor, if a team lets him be a factor in offense, that is, good luck, because you're right. Where else do you go? You got Xavier Rhodes on your left. You got Everson Griffin coming off the edge, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, one of the fastest, underrated middle linebackers in football. They've just got playmakers at every level.
Boy, they've drafted well, haven't they? I mean, like, when you start dropping these names start to sound like something I heard Mel Kiper talking about on a Thursday night or on a Friday, on the NFL Network or whatever. And then you go see these guys. And I saw them last Monday night. Like, the effort was kind of choppy against the Bears, I thought, but certainly everything changed once Bradford left. But defensively, it was kind of there all night, especially against the run.
It was. You're right. I mean, I think Mitchell Trubisky, the rookie who was making his first start there, he was gifted possession, like at his own 40, the Vikings 40. Like, he was given possession at midfield because the Vikings were playing so poorly on special teams on Monday night. And then all of a sudden, obviously, you see that defense just hold up and not give really much of an inch at all. So it does. They've drafted really well on defense. I think the one kind of blemish on the GM's record is obviously the inability to settle on a quarterback, but all these injuries that just keep happening, it's obvious to see why that's happened. The Vikings have spent 3 first-round picks on a quarterback, including the Sam Bradford trade since 2011, I believe, and they're still looking for their guys. So that'll happen with injuries, but you're right. Defensively, God, they got stars across the board.
What's the deal with Bridgewater? Where are you on that? And where's the franchise on that? And certainly, Keenum has played well enough, and you got a couple of games coming up here that, it looks like Bridgewater would be 3 weeks away from eligibility. I know you guys are getting on a plane right after the game, the franchise is, and going off to London and doing the whole week-long thing over there. We did the in and out where we came in the front door and had our ass kicked back out the back door across the Atlantic Ocean. You guys are playing the Browns. Can we play the Browns at Wembley? Oh, that's right. We play them twice a year. But I mean, this is a nice little spot to get Bridgewater better. That if you want to make that move, if you're Zimmer, but who knows where that is? The kid was a hell of a leader, though, right? I mean, everyone around that franchise responded to him.
Yeah, they absolutely do. He's one of the favorites in the locker room. It actually meant a lot to his teammates and the coaching staff, for that matter, that he chose to do his rehab in Minnesota. He could have gone to Florida. He could have left the facility like a lot of guys do when they get injured for that, especially that kind of significant injury where it requires so much attention in rehab. He could have done it elsewhere. He could have gone his own people, but he didn't. He stuck with the team, stuck around his teammates. He's been taking the practice scripts after every one recently and running it on his own after practice. I mean, he's been doing the little things that people notice. When they're leaving the facility, they're seeing Teddy out on the field as they walk to the parking lot. And that's a big thing. It doesn't go unnoticed by guys. And so I think when you're getting Teddy back, The question is going to be, how is he going to handle these practices? That was such a severe knee injury, the ones that you see only from a Willis McGahee, a Lattimore, the guys that really don't put together long careers. But then how's it going to look on a quarterback? We don't really have too many examples of that. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he handles these practices. And you're right, it is a good stretch for this Vikings team to kind of go through this now, because it's when you look at it from the Vikings perspective, it's 2 winnable games against the Ravens and Browns, and then it's the bye week. And then 4 weeks later is when you're thinking, okay, maybe Teddy's ready to come back if we need him. So I think it's a good kind of stretch to get him and bring him along, and everybody's really excited to see how he looks on a practice field.
Boy, I look down on the schedule. All I see is at. Boy, the end of the year, they're on the road a lot, man, right? I mean, there's been some home cooking here, and, now you got to get on the jet plane and go to Wembley. You get a week off, go back to Washington, Detroit, Atlanta, Carolina, Green Bay. Not long trips, but just a lot of road football, a lot of road Sundays to wake up, and then you guys are obviously playing the morning game on Thanksgiving as well. So that's a quick turnaround. It's going to be a rough schedule at the end of the year, but the opening is just sitting there, right, for you guys, for Detroit, with this Green Bay gaping wound happening up there at Lambeau.
It is, and they're getting the start that we kind of thought they needed to. If they were going to have a solid season, they needed to win a bunch of these first 5, because I think they have first 5 of the first 7 are at home for the Vikings. And if you were going to get off to a good season, a good start, and try to salvage something, you needed to go, 4-2, 5-2 through these first few games, and it looks like they're on track to do that. So you're right; it's going to be a tough back end of it. But when you talk about kind of what went wrong last year, much of it had to do with the offense. The reason why they went 3-8 after going 5-0 to start the year was because that offense fell apart. And right now you're seeing this offense take hits, and they haven't quite fell apart yet. So I think that's the one kind of sliver of hope you can look at if you're a Vikings fan and say, hey, at least we're scoring 20 points a game, whereas last year they couldn't even do that.
Andrew Kramer covers all things Vikings up in Minnesota. It's Purple on Purple this weekend. We'll be going up to the Twin Cities. You can find him at Andrew_Kramer. That's KRAMMER out on Twitter, as well as at Access Vikings and at thestartribune.com in the Twin Cities. The Super Bowl's coming up there, and I guess it's not lost on anybody there that you'd love to be that team that hosted and plays in it and all that stuff. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I mean, this is the week everyone's decorating the Philadelphia Eagles. Last week it was the Chiefs. Next week, who knows who will be. But, things are certainly shaking out in this forever 3-3 parity-laden league. I don't know that it's the best football, but it certainly gives everyone a chance to believe. But when you're hosting the game, and I'm sure that minute I land, I'll see signs in the airport, signs on the street, because that's the way this thing works. But there's a lot of buzz going on up there in regard to the Super Bowl. By the way, my first ever Super Bowl was the Thurman Thomas Bills Redskins Super Bowl back there at the Metrodome many, many moons ago. So for me, it's going to be nice to come out there, and I've purchased some new long johns for the winter, Andrew. So I'm hoping to be warm walking through the little hamster glass things you guys have in downtown Minneapolis there.
Yeah, those Skyways. They're going to try and use those as much as they can for you, and for everybody who's visiting, the millions that they expect to come in. So, it's all over the place. You see the branding. You see the Bold North as their slogan that they're trying to sell for
Bold
this one.
North. All right, I like that.
Yeah, much kind of like, New York had that kind of, cold weather Super Bowl not too long ago. This one, also, game's going to be indoors, so when you're watching the game, you'll be saved from it. But all the festivities for the weeks leading up to it are mostly going to be outdoors or held, somewhere near downtown Minneapolis. So, yeah, bring your parka. I think, though, when you're talking about the game itself and the Vikings, not too far-fetched at this point, because Aaron Rodgers isn't out there anymore. I think when I said at the top, I think it holds true, is that when they knocked Aaron Rodgers out, it not only turned the division upside down, but I think it turned the conference upside down, because he was the best quarterback arguably in the entire NFL, not just the conference. And when you knock the top quarterback out, I think the whole conference is pretty much up for grabs at this point.
Well, the other notion of that would be going to Green Bay if they get to 12 or 13, right? And they're the 1 seed, because the Falcons have faltered. Who knows what's going to happen with the Eagles, and certainly who knows what's going on with the rest of the teams in that division at this point. But the fear there was going there and trying to win. I don't think anybody's afraid of going to Detroit or going to Carolina or even going to Philadelphia. I think there was something about about beating the best quarterback in Green Bay in January outside. That was going to take a special effort. Now all of that's gone. So I think it's a little bit more of a mad scramble, and certainly that probably gets the Vikings organization even more on red alert about this Bridgewater thing, right?
It really does, and that's why I do think with Teddy Bridgewater, the original plan wasn't necessarily to expect him to play this year because at the point they had a healthy Sam Bradford throughout the offseason. That is not the case, and who knows when Sam is going to be ready to play again after how bad he looked in Chicago. He still hasn't practiced since that game, and so I think that kind of puts the onus more on Teddy Bridgewater and saying, look, there is a clear path to starting quarterback, and it can be yours, Teddy, if you're ready to play. And so the practices here in the next few weeks are going to tell that.
Talk about Zimmer a little bit. I'm not super close to him like I am some of the people that have spent time in Baltimore, but he's on that Marvin Lewis wing, and obviously has been a great leader there. And he had the eye thing going on back in the spring and into the summer. Obviously no one has. I almost lost my wife twice to leukemia, and I know he lost his wife very, very tragically. His son's on the staff, big family guy, big football guy, real ball coach guy, and I think being around him just a little bit, and that's all I've been around him, it's easy to see why he's successful.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to see the dichotomy because Mike Zimmer didn't get hired as a head coach for years when he was the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati, because you would hear stories about how he would go into interviews and be pretty brazen and be upfront and be honest and bluntly honest, as he would put it. And, I don't think GMs or owners like being told that their previous decisions were terrible. And so I think that kind of can rub people the wrong way, but credit to the Wilfs and the Vikings ownership and their GM, Rick Spielman. They realized, we had the worst defense in the NFL in 2013 before Mike Zimmer arrived. And ever since, they've had one of the best. And it is because of Mike Zimmer. It's because of the personnel decisions, the guys, his coaching staff, the people he picks to put around him. Some of the guys they've drafted since he's been here, and it's his leadership. It's his steady approach. He can be a very emotional guy, as anybody who knows him, especially after a loss. But he generally tries to take the approach of not getting too high or too low, and I think guys respect that. He's not a kind of guy who's going to go in the media and blast a player. He's not going to be the kind of guy, like, if he wants to say something to you, he will pull you into his office and say it one-on-one. And I think people respect that. And it's somebody who's going to, just like the detractors and maybe why he didn't get hired as a head coach, a lot of people like the fact that he's just going to tell you how it is to your face and not play the politics or do any of that kind of stuff. And so I think that has helped through all the injuries and all the upheaval this Vikings franchise has gone through. Because people forget, when Mike Zimmer got hired, then his star running back, Adrian Peterson, was suspended for an entire year for beating his child. And
there's been constant drama there in the same way the Ray Rice thing was here, but Peterson lingered. I mean, Rice never came back, and they tried to run away from it. Boy, you couldn't run away from that. There was your best player, and everybody had to kind of stand up for him, and that went on for 2.5 years, literally, right?
It did, and nobody, and I don't think enough people credit Mike Zimmer for the role he played in squashing all that, because there was one point in that 2015 offseason where Ben Dogra, Adrian's agent, is getting into fights with Rob Brzezinski at the Combine, after one too many. And I mean, just so many things were kind of boiling over, and Adrian's publicly saying that he wants out, or he doesn't know if he wants to come back to Minnesota, or he doesn't know if he feels welcomed. And then all of a sudden, I think it would have been in May of 2015, Adrian had said something along the lines of that, he wasn't sure when or if he was going to show up to off-season practices. And the next day, Mike Zimmer has a phone conversation with him. Adrian's in the door 2 days later. I think who knows what happened in that conversation, but the point is it took a phone call with Mike Zimmer for Adrian to be like, all right, I'm going to show up, and here I am. And so
almost like the great communicator to some degree, right?
Yeah, you can't overlook. Now, certainly there have been headaches. You had the whole mutiny situation in Green Bay last year where his veteran corner decided to go against his plan, Terrence Newman, that is, for shadowing Jordy Nelson. So you've got hiccups, certainly, but yeah, overall, just the amount of drama that's been around this team, and for them to be 4-2 at this point in his fourth year, it's pretty impressive.
Mike Wallace didn't have a good ride there, did he, Andrew?
No, he didn't. I think the Vikings didn't get what they expected from Mike, and I think Mike didn't get what he expected from the Vikings. I think that kind of went both ways. The Vikings wanted him a lot, actually, in 2013 when they signed Greg Jennings, but Mike wanted the warmer weather, and I think he even got the bigger contract from the Dolphins before they traded him to Minnesota. So I see, though, Mike still making some plays out there. That's good to see. He was always a good dude in the locker room. I always enjoyed talking to him.
He is Andrew Kramer. You can follow him at Andrew_Kramer with 2 M's out at the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. Also, Access Vikings, the way to find him on the podcast side of things. Last thing for you, we talked about the Super Bowl. A few of our fans going out. I mean, half of our fan base went to London, and the other half's pissed off in the knee, and we lost bad, and nobody's going on the road. But I am looking forward to the stadium. I'll be there for the Super Bowl, and I'll be going to the big game this year. But what is the upshot of the new stadium there? I mean, obviously, there's one in Atlanta now. Every year or two, I wind up saying, I've been to every stadium. I actually did 30 ballparks in 30 days 2 summers ago for leukemia and for the bone marrow registry, and Atlanta went and opened a new ballpark, so I got to go there. Now Atlanta's opened a new football stadium. Now Minnesota's got a new football stadium. So, every time I say I've been to all 32, I haven't. I've only been to 30 all of a sudden. So, and I'm a stadium nerd, but what is the upshot? I'm kind of expecting to see the Metrodome grown up. It's in the same neighborhood. I drove by it 2 summers ago when I was there for Target on my baseball tour. And it was sort of, 2/3 built, kind of, sort of. I know the birds are flying into the glass, but, what has it meant for the franchise, really?
It's meant a lot, and you'll be surprised when you roll up and see it. When you cross the 35W bridge across the Mississippi and see the skyline with that stadium, it's not what you're used to seeing in Minneapolis. You're used to seeing the big, giant knee pad that was the Metrodome. And so
big
when you
pillow in the sky.
Exactly. And now when you see this new stadium, it looks much more like something out of Star Wars or Star Trek. I mean, it really stands out, and it creates kind of its own unique skyline part with the city. So it is beautiful to look at. And it's beautiful inside, too. There isn't a bad seat in the house. Day games, night games, they know how to turn the thing into a party. And so it's been a cool couple of years so far with it, and it's meant a lot to the franchise in general. Because now, for instance, I mean, not that there's recruiting in football, because there really isn't. I mean, free agency is all about money. But when you bring guys in, you're not bringing them to this dumpy old Metrodome that seats, about 2/3 of what it should seat, and obviously just doesn't look that great. I mean, I think in general, it's a status symbol almost, like all these things are for NFL teams. And it shows that this Vikings franchise is serious about how it portrays itself and how it wants to play, and not only play, but how it looks. And it goes along, too, with the new practice facility that they're going to be opening here. They went down to Jerry World, Jerry Jones's Dallas Cowboys practice facility a couple years ago, and scouted that out. And they've been building their own ever since. So that's going to open here in March of 2018.
Well, Coach Zimmer has a little relationship with Jerry, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. Obviously, they go back a little bit. He's got relationships with a few guys from those Dallas Cowboy days. Obviously, Norv Turner was one of them when Norv was here for a little bit.
Hey, great having you on, Andrew. We'll send everybody out to find you at the Star Tribune. You do your podcast at Access Vikings. And, of course, you can find him at Andrew_Kramer. That's Kramer. Appreciate the visit, man. We'll see you out in the Twin Cities. I'm looking forward to, I'm calling this like a little sneak preview, like an appetizer for my 9 special days of winter. Did I mention I hate the cold? My people are from the equator in Venezuela. Have I mentioned that yet?
No, you did not. So you're going to, well, being in Baltimore, I'm sure you're going to be used to this.
Dude, Hagen's going to have me running around the Mall of America, and I'll be picking out some kind of scarf before it's all over with, so.
It'll be a good purchase.
Purple's always in bloom in Minneapolis. Great to have you on, Andrew. Thanks for the time, bud.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate
You got it. Andrew Kramer from the Star Tribune in the Twin Cities joining us here. Big reminder, on Friday, I am celebrating a momentous day in my life. I'm not going to get into any other Hall of Fame, maybe some Halls of Shame, but the Dundalk High folks have erroneously nominated me to be in the Dundalk High Hall of Fame. So that's going to happen on Friday. 4:30 is the ceremony. 6 o'clock's the game. We're heading to Costas around 7:30. We'd love to see your face in the place. If you're local, you want to come get some crabs, some crab cakes, some beer, maybe some cake before it's all over with. We'll see you at Costas on Friday night in old Dundalk near the Golden Dome. So I'll be missing my mom, so we're going to toast my mom on Friday night. It'll be my first time going back to Costas since I lost Mom back in August. So big weekend for me around here on the backside of the birthday. Headed off to Minneapolis on Saturday. Luke's on the backfields in Owings Mills, bringing you all the news that's fit to print. If there's any breaking news, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. Of course, that's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST. Heard from 3 until 5 on Thursday here. All brought to you by Coons Ford. Don't forget, our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.